Great. So thanks, thanks a lot. All of you have joined, I think. So my voice is audible, clear?
Yes.
Great. So let's start the day, guys, so that we are on time and we don't miss out on any great hearing from all of you speakers. So good day to everyone from all parts of the world who have registered for the great webinar happening today. Hope you and your family are doing safe in COVID times. Our best wishes are with all of you. Now, to begin with, let me introduce myself and the company to you. My name is Nitin Naveen, and I will be your host for the day. I'm working as Vice President Innovation Strategy at AI CoreSpot. Further, I have been joined by my colleague Arvind and Naveen, who will also assist me in keeping the event lively and resolving technical glitches if it comes in between. So, thanks a lot to them for putting in hard work and making this one a huge success. We'll try to provide a seamless experience to all of you so that you can gain maximum output out of the same. Let me provide a brief background to all of you about AI CoreSpot. We started last year, backed up by InfoVision, who is our knowledge and innovation partner, and Digit7, who is our technology partner. Our mission is to serve a hub for information regarding Industry 4.0 technologies, which includes AI, ML, deep learning, digital twin, AR, VR, robotics, IoT, blockchain, 5G, drone, analytics, edge AI, edge computing, cloud, and so on. The focus is to provide all of you a deep dive in all the sectors where technology is there. And every month we have a separate theme. We are gaining momentum month on month. Our aim is to be number one AI driven community all over the world so that like minded people like you can be a part of the same in growing, supporting, and making it a success. We'll enrich whatever content we get through the digital world, through the blogs, through the videos, podcasts, newsletters, to shed light on this ever evolving industry. Our focus is to do industry backed webinars and hybrid events. The knowledge base will be made from reliable data through the industry leaders, subject matter experts, thought leaders, and our partners, which is InfoVision and Digit7. Today, we are having a lovely and unique webinar around the great theme which covers how 5G is transforming the telecom industry. So, if you guys want to know the pace, challenges, advantages, and many more aspects of 5G technology in telecom industry, then you are in the right place. We'll go all over it throughout the panel discussion and give lots of insights to you. There are lot of more in store for the subsequent months as well, with focus on banking, financial, insurance, retail, telecom, healthcare, supply chain, manufacturing, utility, energy, and we keep on adding new verticals as well to this. So request all of you to go through our website, which is aicorespot.io, for further updates. Also, please like our social media handles, which will keep you all updated on everything what we propose to offer in the coming months to follow. Before starting with the day, I would like to highlight few things so that it can set up the tone for the amazing learning and networking day. A special mention about our knowledge and innovation partner, InfoVision, which is an end-to-end IT and business service provider specializing in providing technology transformation and innovation projects for over 25 years across multiple industries. They have over 3,000 technology professionals working across 12 global locations, including US, Latin America, Middle East, and India. They serve over 65 customers across banking, financial industry, telecom, media, retail, consumer goods, healthcare, and the manufacturing industries. The core services which they offer includes digital engineering services comprising of cloud, big data, analytics, DevOps, application services, legacy modernization, digital quality assurance, mobile, API microservices, social media research, analysis, and cybersecurity. They also have a unique state-of-the-art research and innovation lab named Digit7 in Richardson, Texas, with 4 great products at their store, which includes dgrab, DigitShells, TagSquare, and FlyRobo. The beauty of all the 4 products is that they are customizable, cost-effective, and can be used in every industry where the technology is needed. With their strong technology capabilities and delivery expertise, we are sure that they can help anyone in their transformation journey and provide technology needs to build future-proof business models and excellence into one's end customer experience. So to get in touch with them, kindly log on to their website, which is infovision.com, and leave your details through the Contact Us section. Now moving on and coming to our community partners for today. It includes great companies. We have Dell Technologies, Signalwire, AFL Telecommunications, and Inseego Corporation, who came together to make this webinar a success. A special mention to attendees of the event who registered and came today to achieve their objectives through this forum. At the end of the day, through this platform, if you gain few things or get to network with each other, then our core objective will be achieved. Further, if anybody wants to ask question, they can type it in the Q&A section, which is there at the right corner of the menu option. You can type in as and when the panel member speaks, and we'll try to get it answered in the last as per the time permitted. There's also a hand button at the bottom of the screen through which you can even raise the hand and come to the stage to ask questions to speakers as well. Now let's begin the day. Let me hand over the stage to Ashish, who is the Chief Business Officer handling telecom, media, and technology from Infovision, who is the moderator for this panel discussion as well. He's joined by Vish, VP Technology and Strategy at Dell Technologies. Anthony, who is founder and CEO at Signalware. Then we have Joshua, who's markets, strategy and innovation at AFL Telecommunications. Then we have Sunil, who is the global head sales support telecom services at Dell Technologies, and Ritesh, senior vice president at Inseego Corporation. So we have a huge, great experience. I think it's more than 120, 125 years of experience in the telecom industry. Really excited for the panel discussion. So over to you, Ashish, to begin this exciting panel discussion.
Thanks, Nitin. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone who is on this webinar today. It's my privilege to have this distinguished speakers from across the industry for this seminar, and I'm very excited to have with them a great session which we have lined up for today. With that, we all know 5G is transforming the whole telecom industry. Not only the telecom industry, but it is transforming the whole ecosystem. Till 4G, if we know, 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, the focus was all around network. With 5G coming in, there has been a multiple initiatives across the globe, which every organization, every enterprise is taking. 5G is taking the network and the connectivity to the end enterprise. With that, I would like to start with some of the questions around how 5G is transforming. One of the big focus area is on the enterprise side. I would like to start with Ritesh. Ritesh, what are your views about different 5G use cases which we are seeing and which every enterprise is looking for, and how you are seeing the adoption of those use cases?
Thanks, Ashish. Fixed wireless access, or FWA, is probably the most prominent use case for 5G today outside of cell phone connections and for enterprises. If we look at it, more than 90% of the 150 or 180 operators who have launched 5G have an FWA offering. We are seeing more and more enterprises connect their sites using 5G for either primary or backup connections. And there are some pockets of deployments with the private networks as well, like for venues and stadiums and so on. But we are seeing also a rise in remote surveillance and video backhaul over 5G. The remaining use cases like connected cars and remote surgeries are going to pick up at some point, but they are obviously not. They're only demos today, and they are in their infancy. But I would say that fixed wireless access is currently about, I think for us at least, it's 90% of the deployment. And the next wave of use cases will be from manufacturing and Industry 4.0, followed by maybe hopefully Metaverse, AR, VR, and edge processing.
No, thanks, Ritesh. This is definitely helpful. Vish, I know you have a lot of focus around 5G and on the enterprise side and different use cases which you guys are looking at. Ritesh talked about Metaverse. Is one of the use case which we are seeing a lot of adoption from AR, VR, XR, and now the Metaverse as all. What are your views around these use cases and the adoption of these use cases, how enterprise can benefit?
Yeah, I think that we're seeing uneven uptake of the use cases. That certainly, from a marketing perspective, there's been a lot of rolling thunder around. Specifically when we take a look at things like augmented reality, mixed reality, virtual reality, there's definitely a lot of trial and experiments that are occurring. I think we're still starting to, kind of settle out what are the best practices for implementing these. Certainly, when you look at something like virtual reality, you want to be able to render everything in the edge computing. For augmented reality, there's more of a mixed set of capabilities for the spatial processing, both at the client side and on the edge side. And they all require different transmission speeds in order to both be able to carry the video traffic that's being transported, but also to be able to achieve the latencies that are required. You're talking about some pretty staggering coherence times that you have to hit in order to spatially anchor a photon on your retina. On the order of 10 milliseconds, which is still very difficult to achieve without implementing the full boatload of 5G capabilities, including things like local breakout, which is still fairly rare in terms of implementation. So while I think that there's great promise, we still haven't seen widespread deployment. I think where we have seen a lot of uptake has been particularly in opportunities to take on host type deployment, where if you go into a venue, for instance, which have traditionally been addressed through DAS systems, there's opportunities to start to pull in some of the new toolkit of capabilities that the industry is providing, like CBRS spectrum, which provides cost relief in terms of being able to build out shared infrastructure and reduces the cost for coverage. So I think we're seeing those vanilla kinds of business models that have been successful in the past start to profit from some of the 5G capabilities and the ecosystem, particularly around CBRS, that's starting to take root. The real areas I think of interest are going to be to go into the operational technology side of the house and really start to make some inroads. We talk Industry 4.0, and today many of the types of control systems that you see in industrial settings are proprietary. It's proprietary network, it's proprietary sensors, and there's a premium and a cost associated with that. I think with 5G, we're starting to bring in a lot of those latency resistance types of capabilities, but also high resiliency with the ability to get redundancies from multiple spatial modes and cooperative multi-point types of technologies. Those are going to be, I think, game changers in terms of really revolutionizing digital transformation in industrial settings. But we're still at the beginning of that adoption phase. So I think we can see the trajectory, and we can see definitely the roadmap of 5G starting to intersect with that trajectory, but we're not at critical masses yet.
Sure. No, this is very helpful. And Sunil, I know Vish talked about edge computing, and we all know how much focus is there on edge side. The telecom operators, the OEMs like you and others, there is a huge amount of focus in terms of bringing edge closer to the enterprises. And Vish talked about some of the examples and use cases. Would love to hear your views around edge and how these edge can be monetized by bringing some of the industry solutions, like InfoVision is having a lot of industry specific solutions, which we are talking to you and other partners in terms of monetization. So would love to hear your views around that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So means one of the use case, which is edge, is picking up now, means even though there have been, a lot of discussion on it, but we all know 5G, the G of Gs, unlike previous Gs, is really, enterprise G, right? Means this is bringing up the use cases where people should have their own network and be able to have not only the commercial feasibility of what they want to achieve, but also have the security, have the bandwidth in their own way of how they want to achieve. right? So in there comes the 5G, the service edge. And for all the, let's say, companies which want to utilize that, they have to be preparing not only the infrastructure, they want to be preparing, having the right solution, but they also want to partner with the right partners who should be able to make it available for them in the right feasibility of not only the commerce, but also the technology, right? So in that view, as you said very well, we are working with Intel, for example, building up the solution on Dell commercial off-the-shelf hardware, and then having the vertical applications, which could be, very variety of applications, as Vish very well mentioned, right? And one of the things which we are working with InfoVision is on the wireless retail side of the house. So we would want to put a proof of concept into the market to showcase maybe in Mobile World Congress Barcelona. But the point is that we want to see everything working intact so that this can be plugged and played into various use cases which can emerge out of this stack of things working together.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Yeah, I really appreciate that. We talked about enterprise use cases. We talked about the edge computing, the impact of bringing edge closer to the enterprises. Joshua, what do you think are the important factors in ensuring the infrastructure? Because we are talking about a layer above, but before that, there is a infrastructure which is important for us to build, so that whatever use cases which we are talking today and the monetization and all can be benefit. So would love to hear your views in terms of the infrastructure, how telecom and the OEMs are taking care of that, and also the challenges which you are seeing.
Sure. And I'll talk about two parts of the infrastructure. One is the broader infrastructure and what we call the access network that exists between a telecom's central office or switching location and the subscriber, and then what happens within a subscriber's premise. So they're building, the enterprises buildings. So one of the things we're seeing both globally and in North America is it's important to understand that 5G is really a fiber network. We think of it as a wireless network because that's what the standard covers. But all those wireless nodes, whether they're fixed, mobile, indoor, outdoor, need a data connection to the rest of the world. And generally speaking, that ends up being a fiber connection, even if it's a copper connection or a short distance of wireless backhaul, it ends up going on to a fiber fairly quickly. So if you're communicating across with a data, sending an email to someone 2,000 or 12,000 miles or kilometers away, the first kilometer might be wireless, the last kilometer might be wireless, the other 11,998 are probably over fiber. And that's created a lot of demand for fiber and a lot of demand for fiber installers. And we're seeing in a lot of parts of the world, the manufacturers are struggling to keep up with the demand, but we're getting there. We build more factories, we can deliver more, that will catch up. Depending on what country you're in, the labor market may or may not be able to support this level of installation. So we may see some slowdown in deployment of 5G simply because we don't have the trained labor to put in this fiber network as well as the wireless nodes to keep up with demand. And manufacturers are addressing this by both partnerships to help train people as well as by developing systems to get that fiber into the ground or on the poles more effectively with less labor and streamlining the supply chain to do that. Now within the business, this is where it gets challenging. The telecoms have to look at these business use cases to pay off this investment they're putting in 5G and the supporting fiber infrastructure. Individual subscribers like you and me with our smartphones, we're not going to do it because we're not going to pay that much more for a 5G service to pay off this investment. So it's through these business use cases and by supporting them, not just with the data pipe, but with additional services that telecoms will pay off their 5G investment. But there's a challenge there, especially if you think about a business that's large enough to need wireless nodes within their buildings, larger factories, larger office complexes. That's an even larger investment for the telecom companies if they're going to go in and build this infrastructure. On the other hand, individual companies themselves don't necessarily have the expertise to deploy a wireless and wired infrastructure to support these implementations. So the telecoms are looking at a bunch of different business models for who pays for that installation and upgrade in a factory, in a large office complex, who owns it going forward, how that's managed, who pays who for its use. And companies like ours, especially AFL, we're in a position where we do both the manufacturing of the equipment and the installation of systems like that, are working with them to come up with different business models to address their need to manage capital up front, but also provide this level of services to get their payoff over the long term.
Thank you so much. And I think there are a couple of good points. Joshua, you mentioned about the business models and some of the partnerships which are coming together. So I'll come to that, but I would like to go to Anthony. 5G is not about only connectivity and fiber, but there is a huge amount of software which is coming into play, whether it is ORAN or it is definitely everything is software defined today in the 5G space. Orchestration is all around software defined. So Anthony, would love to hear your views in terms of what do you think, how software is transforming and bringing the digital transformation through 5G in this space.
Sure. So as we've been hearing, the internet is really important. It's, as 5G comes to be, is essentially the third or fourth rendition of the internet, right? And the internet sort of evolves similar to other infrastructure. You've got roads, they're dirt roads, and then there's cement, and then there's a highway, and then there's the old highway, and you keep building on top of it. And as we've been doing this, we've been also working on trying to, the internet needs software because that's mainly how it communicates, right? And the entire point of SaaS is software. When it comes to real-time communication software, it's a lot more tricky than anything else, right? If your typical DocuSign or something like that is just a website, and like you don't care how fast it is as long as you press the button and wait for it to be done. But when we're having this conversation, we're hurdling all these packets, whatever frame rate our video and audio is being synchronized in the encoder and decoder in real time. You don't have very long to miss or be wrong about things, right? So we've started trying to move packets over the internet a really long time ago. Even before, when Telecom first had voice over IP, everyone was kind of laughing at it, including most of the carriers. Like, yeah, right, you're gonna like put the people's voice over the internet instead of our amazing phone lines, and fast forward a couple years later, they're trunking behind the scenes on the internet. And the faster the internet gets, the easier it is to do stuff like that. So from the inside out, we started doing it from large data centers that had really strong connections. But as we start doing some of this mobile network stuff, we're building the internet again, right? We call it the edge sometimes, but really it's like, it actually is the internet now, right? Like we've moved most people, like stop using arcane ways of getting online. You don't use modems or anything, like, go on your hotspot. You're starting to trust it more. You might have to fall back to Wi-Fi sometimes, but, right out from under us, things got easier and we just adopted to it. One day we were, plugging our phone into our computer so that we could back it up, and just didn't even realize that, oh wait, it's just doing it by itself now because the internet got faster. And even if I'm like out at the beach, my phone decides to synchronize. You wouldn't even realize it. And the faster the internet gets, the more stuff you can take advantage of it. So one of the things that we've been doing the entire time, waiting for this moment, is to try and make the software as resilient as possible. Because even in perfect conditions, something goes wrong, a squirrel bites a cable or something, you have to work around and like reroute packets sometimes, so latency goes up and down. In the middle of this call we're having right now, if something happened to my internet, I would have to figure out how to adjust the frame rate and stuff to keep the call going and prioritize my audio. There's a whole bunch of challenges that we face when we're developing this kind of software. And it's been mostly about trying to convert the internet to be as fast and low latency as possible, so that that software resiliency only comes into play when there's like something wrong. And when we first started doing this, we had to do it almost constantly. Couldn't even have a call without like doing some kind of packet correction almost, because there was barely enough bandwidth to even have a call like this. Now we have more, so we take it for granted, but there are lots of things you have to do to keep the lights on when it comes to making software work over the internet. But the bet that I've made as a software engineer is that the internet will continue to get better, because, I was there using 96 baud modem all the way up to, today's gigabit internet that I'm on as I'm talking to you. So I keep trusting on computers getting more powerful and the internet getting faster. And I keep my side of the fence is to work on making sure that the software can scale and maintain itself, So I've devoted pretty long hours into building pure software telecom switching, because here at SignalWire we pretty much are positive about the fact that most communication will just ride over the internet. So if we bet on making the internet fast and resilient, we can put in bed almost everything. And we've already seen this, right? Like the cord cutting movement, and we're watching TV over the internet now. Everyone thought that was silly. Now we're going both directions in real time. We're making all kinds of great strides. So to me, the internet getting faster and more resilient is key. And I think the software just has to learn to adapt to it, because in this day, also with virtual compute, you can scale almost to any size as long as everything's made out of software. So that's like one of the tenets of what we do also. Like making things as software makes it so it can run anywhere. Raspberry Pi, a real computer, a virtual Amazon server, or any other kind.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful, and that's really insightful. So, since you're talking about the software, and we are looking at software-defined network, completely all the networks are managed through orchestration. Everything is in cloud. This also brings in security aspect, right? So, how do we really secure our network? And I would like to start with Vish. What are your views around security in the 5G space?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a rising point of concern. I think we've seen the evolution of wireless move from TDMA amps days to what it is today now is 5G, and it's kind of evolved from a nice to have to critical infrastructure. We're seeing more traffic that's sensitive to enterprises and actually our strategic concerns that now rely on 5G, and so security raises its profile. And I think there's, when we talk specifically about 5G, there's kind of categories that I'd look at. One is there's what I would consider the traditional mobile security threats, things like rogue base stations, things like jamming attacks from frequencies. Those still exist, and there's actually interventions that 5G has made to address some of the deficits that we've seen in prior generations. Particularly as it relates to the subscriber identifiers. Now you have concealed identifiers, and you have data integrity methods that exist on the user plane. So there's a lot of things that have been addressed that were failings and vulnerabilities in prior generations that now are made more resilient through 5G. I think that there's a middle category that's really around implementation, and when you take a look at what is 5G doing that's different than prior stovepipe generations of proprietary systems, we're seeing this movement towards more cloud-aligned technology. Anthony kind of mentioned it, and you talked a little bit about how there's a softwareization that's occurring within the cellular infrastructure space, and that's certainly true when we take a look at what's happening in 5G with technologies like Open RAN or Cloud RAN or Virtual RAN, all kind of taking the lead in terms of what's being deployed. When you look at virtualization, it comes with its own set of security opportunities in terms of the fact that it's perfect for things like disaster recovery. It allows you to reinstantiate an application fairly quickly by calling an API, and that gives a certain level of redundancy that hadn't really existed as elegantly before. But it comes with its own new vulnerabilities. You can do resource level attacks. There's noisy neighbor attacks. There's issues in terms of the fact that your security real estate is much larger in a virtualized instance, particularly as you take a microservices-based approach to constructing the software. And so those bring in new vulnerabilities that need to be addressed. There's definitely a lot of what I would call industry-level best practices that can be applied in the 5G context from a cloud and virtualization perspective. So that's what I would call the second category. And then the third category is really around, there's just new things that we're doing with 5G. And those, necessarily start to expose different vulnerabilities. And those new things are things like we're putting AI into 5G. If you look within the Open RAN specification, they have things like the the RAN intelligence controller, which allows different apps to have access to deep parts of the network. And those apps tend to be machine learning or AI based. And it again exposes us to new types of adversarial threats in terms of people launching specific data attacks on those AI to create malicious responses. Now, we do have emerging bodies of understanding of how to defend against those things, but they're still emerging. Another big capability that comes with 5G is around network slicing, which we haven't seen massive commercial rollout. But what it does is it starts to break up the sovereignty of the 5G network. It brings in multi-tenancy, which is fantastic. Because now I can give a slice to a particular enterprise who might want a metaverse, or I can give a slice to an industry who may want some industrial control capability. So that's fantastic. But it opens up a security that comes by extending your administrative domain into the enterprise. And now there's a new actor involved in terms of how things are working. The enterprise side of 5G also requires vertical handoffs with other technologies like Wi-Fi. And as I'd said, 5G is really kind of built from the ground up to be the sole authenticator. You authenticate to the 5G network. When you're authenticating between two different networks, that creates issues that need to be resolved. And so we're starting to see a lot more attention being poured into, how do we solve for some of these new types of deployment use cases that come in with 5G. So, that's kind of the last bucket I'd describe. All three are important. What we're finding is that there is a kind of a bow we're tying across all these, because we're bringing in, some new principles that I think have been fairly successful. Things like zero trust or least privilege-based methods, where we can apply proper segmentation to reduce the blast radius of, someone infiltrating one part of the network and being able to get access to others. So how we do the key management hierarchy, all of those things, I think, are giving a lot more discipline as a formal set of principles to follow as you start to build out your security and defenses for the 5G network. So we've got good principles and policies. It's just a matter of, seeing how those weather over some level of deployment so that we can pick up what the frailties are and start to address them. I think the last thing that I'd mention was 5G, which is, probably a boon or a headwind, not a headwind, but a tailwind for security experts, is that we are moving to more agile methodologies. You take a look at the development of modern software-based methodologies being applied to 5G. It brings in an opportunity to do better patching. You have a release cadence that can be much more quickly done. You have CI/CD pipelines that allow for some inbuilt resilience so that you can respond quicker to threats. So that's actually something that I think we're potentially underrepresenting as a new toolkit in the whole cellular generation game.
No, so I think absolutely, yeah.
Please go ahead. Yeah, so great point from Avish, right? So the way I think on it is like when you have more flexibility, more complexity, of course, more errors, right? Means 5G hacking could be like hacking web if the right, things are not put in place, right? Means you have more surface area. So like OEMs, like we are at Dell Technologies, we are looking at patented TPM, which is Trusted Platform Module, right? Putting the encryption keys from our factories where this appliance, when ships out, matches the encryption key. Because as he said, the zero trust is very, very important. And as OEMs, we are playing our role, but surface area is huge. So right from the hardware up to the surface layer with the applications and all the things which we use in the software all need that gravity of checks and balances to make sure that there is a trusted security all around 5G.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think zero trust, especially from the edge standpoint, is extremely critical because the all the communication which is happening on the edge. How do you secure that? And we at InfoVision has built a zero trust a platform, a product, Blue Armor, which takes care of all the security, edge security aspect. So before even the errands are coming to the network, how do you stop it there? Rather than taking them further up, further down, and then realizing something is attacking to your network. So there is a lots of work which we are doing, and definitely these are very insightful. So coming to that, how Ritesh, we are seeing adoption of, and what are the challenges also which we are seeing in adoption of private networks today? Because end of the day, all these things are rolling up to the private networks. How, especially from the enterprise standpoint, what are your views and challenges which you are seeing in that area?
Yeah, I mean, we have seen private network deployments. We make CPEs, so obviously most of the private network deployments use some sort of CPE, and so we are involved in many of them. Some of the private network deployments we have done obviously support network slicing and other things in software as well. The chipsets today, if you look at it, they can do CBRS, they can do all sorts of bands, and they're ready for private networks. But obviously, the entire ecosystem has to be widely deployed for it to be deployed widely. So currently, the private network deployments we see are in pockets, like we have seen obviously deployment in stadiums and buildings and so on. But quite frankly, I mean, as a CPE vendor, the volume of private network deployments is like nothing compared to what we see in the usual public network deployments. So I mean, we definitely think there is a play for it, and obviously with manufacturing and with industries, we should see an expansion of it. But quite frankly, it's not as the hype that is made out to be that private networks are taking over and there's private network everywhere. Well, I mean, quite frankly, even if you do a stadium, you probably need 100 CPEs, but that is nothing compared to the 100,000 CPEs a month an operator is doing for public networks. So the private network deployments are there, and they do solve niche use cases, and they're good for Industry 4.0 or for buildings and smart venues. But we are still not seeing a huge uptake. And some of the speakers already alluded to it. I mean, there's a lot of complexity involved in doing those deployments. I mean, everyone is not really just having even solutions like the Amazon private network, where you get a box and you get some SIM cards which you can plug in and but it's not that straightforward to build. It takes some expertise on your part. And so that is obviously a hindrance. And people are not sure if they can do it. The large enterprises we have seen do that, but it's not mass yet.
And I think it's also the scale, right? So what you're looking in a private mobile network is, even though, like Ritesh said, very small scale, but if you really think from the communication perspectives, it has to has exactly end-to-end the same things like you will see in a telecom network outside the CSP, right? So this means you have to really build the equation where you are able to put all that setup, not only just, communicating, but also real-time monitoring, real-time doing all those automations and orchestrating them well, and still meet the business case with the cost which it will incur, right? So that is the challenge and complexity which probably is keeping it away. But there are good things happening around, right? So we have seen some demands where we are working with some of the top vendors in the world, and some companies who are looking for building these networks. Time will say, how things go, but it is on. The game is on.
I think the big issue in terms of adoption is, the speakers are kind of alluding to it, but it's fundamentally this. when you look at cellular networks, they were built for cellular operators, and transplanting that into an enterprise environment isn't, something that's done seamlessly. There's issues in terms of how do you integrate into the enterprise policy space. The way they configure and manage their networks is fundamentally different than the way a carrier would. So how do you hook into the AAA policies? How do you hook into their LDAP, into their authentication mechanisms, and do that seamlessly so that it configures and allows that network to be managed as if it was just an extension of their regular LAN network? How do you provide the same cost in terms of coverage? Cellular radios aren't that much more expensive in building than Wi-Fi radios, but then you have the cost of the packet core and the subscriptions that come with that start to create a stacking effect in terms of how do you effectively deploy that in terms of cost per square foot. There are ways to get around that. CBRS helps. Neutral hosting helps because it allows you to operate some leverage in terms of amortizing costs. So that there are some interventions that are starting to come in that are going to help that. The last one I'd mention is simply that a lot of times when you're working with private networks, you have to work with the complexity of the service provider processes. So if you want to interconnect and roam with a public network into your private network, that requires a massive set of negotiations and wireless network engineering discussions that the average enterprise is going to have challenges in terms of being able to equip just to understand near fire effects, for instance. But just beyond that, it is a security of that pipe that's interconnecting the two packet cores sufficient. So all of these things are difficult, and I think that there is starting to kind of be some fairly innovative approaches, and I think we're going to see some new business models, particularly as the MVNE market starts to become more robust in the industry, and you start to see these micro operators who are addressing specific types of niche cases, build out the business commercial relationships, and manage some of these complexities at the interconnection level that are going to start to facilitate the deployment of enterprise. So this is taking some time because people are still, we've got all these pieces, but we don't know how to put them together as an ensemble, including a business model that can create traction and set the table for launch of enterprise. But I think we're seeing it. I've been in the industry for 25 years, and I've been trying to do in building, this whole paradigm of can we build our networks from the inside out where the traffic is versus outside in. And we're starting to see more of a focus on these problems that I've talked about. What are the friction points? How do you go from carrier first to enterprise first in terms of how you deploy things? And that's where companies like Dell and others who are bringing that enterprise expertise can help to mix it with the telecom know-how and start to effectively drive some efficiencies in terms of the deployment.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And I know, Joshua, you have some views about the business models, how they are evolving and changing. So would love to hear your views.
Certainly. And I noticed we actually had a question come in that relates to this. So I'll go ahead and answer, even though we're not at the Q&A. And the question was about how telcos can benefit from private 5G and more broadly from business services. So we're seeing a number of different approaches to business models, but the bottom line is the telcos, like I said earlier, have to provide a wider range of services in order to pay for the investment they have to make to support 5G. And again, a lot of that is the fiber investment, not just the wireless equipment. And so just to get an example of what kind of services they provide, if you look up Verizon Enterprise Solutions in the US and see what they offer, you'll see a long list, a whole page with hundreds of different types of services and packages they offer. A lot of it's related to security, as we talked about, using some of their expertise there. Again, the bottom line is being more than just a provider of a data pipe. We also see them entering a number of business models, as I mentioned earlier, with manufacturers and installers such as us for paying for the installation and management of networks, especially within a business. but also we see them partnering with application providers and cloud providers. And again, going back to the Verizon example, their partnership with Amazon Web Services. The telcos have a lot of assets and capabilities that are very important. Just to cite one, if you think back, a telecom central office where phone calls used to go to be switched and connected out to the broader world, that's starting to look very different. And as fiber technologies advance, we don't need as much space for equipment in each of those, and you can reach out farther. A central office doesn't need to be as close. So if nothing else, you've got space there, real estate that's close to the customer. Well, we need real estate close to the customer, data centers, to address some of the latency and other concerns that come up with achieving 5G applications. So that's just one driver of some of these partnerships and some of these different business models you see where, you know, a telco will partner with a hyperscaler data center applications provider to make sure they're part of that full range of packages so that they can keep growing their revenue and not deal with this constant conflict of flat revenue, but growing investment in infrastructure.
Yeah, no, definitely. So one of the things I think, Anthony, you are looking at in terms of real-time communication, and how it is relevant in the 5G space, and is it only from a consumer standpoint? It is also, or it is very relevant from the enterprise standpoint also, because till 4G, the communication used to be from network to device. Now the focus is on device to device, and there are so many devices which we are expecting to be connected. You know, there are billions of devices. Everyone is projecting and coming up with the data, and how this real-time communication will happen, and how the users can be benefited with that. Would love to hear your views.
Right. So, continuing from what we've been talking about, the enterprise is not only being transformed by this process, but is also allowing new people to join the enterprise who otherwise wouldn't in the past, right? So it used to be counting as the enterprise, you have to have a giant building with the data center in it, your own network and your own physical infrastructure. And, you know, just in the way that software in general usually eats use cases, right? You can take something and replace it with software. Like almost every year, there's a new thing we can replace with software. Things we take for granted now, we go back and remember I used to have to do this manually. And digitally transforming telecom is no different. In fact, so if you say you used to be one of those companies that needed to have a big physical data center and you were a customer of Cisco and paying like many $1 million a year for a bunch of equipment that you had to keep replacing and making sure there's security on it. One of the things that makes sense here is that we've transformed a lot of that to the other side of the connection, right? So you have a lot thinner relationship with your service. Not only do you not have a data center anymore, a lot of times even like the big enterprise companies are transforming themselves to a cloud, so their data center is technically just a plot over on Amazon or something. But what that also adds coming from the other side is that anyone who understands how to sign up for some of these services could start a company and like get a head start into that same benefit, right? So you don't have to build physical anything because you can start completely with virtualized software and servers, and some of those companies actually are starting to evolve that provide the missing pieces so that you can use those services to create a product that doesn't require all this, say, head start. So like if I want to start a company, which I did actually just 4 years ago, I don't even need a physical location. Our company's virtual. It's on the internet. I can have my pick of virtual data centers to put any services that we need. They can all be completely software. I can, containerize them and bring them up and down and do all that cool zero trust stuff. Like even if I was like a complete green non-engineer, opposite of what I am, and I was purely business, and I'm like, what am I going to do now? I have a head start that I wouldn't have had before, because there's a lot of things that you can just immediately put online. And because of that, this is more about the other side of the connection. But the fact that we can do that allows all these end users with these crazy devices, you can provide things to them immediately. And it's kind of the same concept. We go back and forth over the years. We've been to and from the cloud a couple times in our history. We started out with you got to have a real computer, and then we'll put them on the internet, but now we don't trust them. So we made better computers that we got to have them on-prem again. So we've gone into the cloud and on-prem a few times, just like real, clouds evaporate and rains and it goes back in the cloud again. So does the way that we look at some of these things. But I think this time it's going to be one of the longer hauls of staying in the cloud, because it's not only the security benefits of not having the vulnerabilities in your side of the fence is actually super attractive to someone trying to start a business. So one of the things I try and focus on is making sure that we leverage as much of these things. There's a lot to do to make telecom scale. And if you can give someone the ability to kind of just brand or put some small changes on something obvious, provide those obvious things, so we no longer have to build those first as a prerequisite to do your business. So in the old days, we used to start a company, we would go in I want to take credit cards, hire a programmer, spend 2 years coming up with a way to store a database to keep credit card numbers, and I have to hire another person, a DBA and a genius programmer to make me an email server that doesn't work, get spammed all the time, and you have all these things that you used to have to do. Now we just take those for granted because there are great cloud services that take care of them for you. You wouldn't be caught dead making your own email server these days unless your company was an email company, and you wouldn't make a payment gateway because you have something like Stripe. So the opportunity, the white space that's appearing because of this transformation is making more services and companies that can provide things so that smaller ideas, smaller companies with a new idea can immediately get online and join the participation. So you're actually expanding the membership club of the enterprise to more people by making it easier, which then, that is very similar to how other things evolve too. So, we'll have a different idea of who the enterprise is after a couple of years, when we start having a lot of different kind of innovative ideas that are they're leveraging this, the boring part. Let's call it the boring part. Everyone needs to be able to send the transmission. The company that made this platform we're on right now probably couldn't have done it if there wasn't some of the work we've done in building software-defined telecom, allowing us to immediately use APIs and stuff and host all the complexity in the cloud, and you can focus on the app. All the features in this app are the only thing they care about. They're not trying to make the literal millions of lines of code it takes to make our video move to and from and things like that. So.
Sure. No, thank you so much. I know we have only 7-8 minutes left, and we have a couple of questions from audiences. I would like to prioritize those, and let's see how we can best answer them. So one of the question is, what are the private 5G opportunities for telcos? And I'll open it for the panel to address in a shorter way.
Well, I'll pick up on something Anthony said, which I think is particularly relevant for this telco opportunity in enterprise. It's this notion of telecom used to be a separate concern from the upper levels of the internet, let's say, in that we never really applied this elegant engineering we have in the world to help to mediate hundreds of thousands of different developers onto something that is probably is probably kind of isolated to maybe 4,000 people who know how to develop very well. There's about 4,000 good RAN engineers in North America who are building out spectrally efficient radios. So how do you mediate all the billions of applications and associated developers on top of that? We've never made it easy. There was attempts like GSMA 1 API, which was horribly constructed and had the wrong developer polarity in terms of what the business model needed to be, and wasn't right-sized because it was developed by a bunch of network engineers versus application software developers. We've got network exposure capabilities now in 5G, and I think that we're seeing much more right-sized integration for people to develop hooks into the underlying network services and create new experiences and applications. So I think that's one of the parts of the equation that's much more mature, and it's helping telecom to extend into enterprise, particularly addressing some of these issues that I've talked about, like how easy is it to integrate into a cellular access point so that it can be reached as an enterprise endpoint that they would traditionally see hanging off their LAN, right? That's not achieved because suddenly there's been a renaissance inside of how we build cellular radios. It's because the abstractions that we've put in allow for that to occur, so that models that in the enterprise can be mapped into models that are happening within the cellular environment. And that mediation is something that's a bit of a tipping point, I think, for 5G in particular, and moving into successive generations where we're going to see that intimacy. I'm hoping that cellular fades into the background and it just becomes something that's easy for anybody to be able to manipulate.
Yeah, sure. Anyone wants to add to this on this point, the panel?
Yeah, just to add to what I was saying earlier, just like Vish said, again, it's not about, now telecom and the data services are central to what most businesses are trying to do. And so there's plenty of opportunities for telecoms to again, provide a wider range of services and provide a solution that actually doesn't just, help my people talk to each other. Now it's actually help me as a business achieve my business model. Even things like, whether it's central to business or even if it's something that's important as where my people work, more people working from home. Well, now as a business, I can save office space, but I also have the challenge of supporting all these people working from home. Again, that's not all about just getting a bigger data pipe. And some of those people working from home may be in areas where the particular telecom doesn't offer service, but they can still provide a package, especially when working with companies like Amazon Web Services and others that help provide the applications, which helps that business achieve their needs, reduce their costs, provide the services they want in a drastically more efficient manner. And even now, with the capabilities of 5G, provide services that couldn't exist before.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We have one more question, and I know we have only 2 minutes, so probably we'll try to quickly address how to build efficiencies into 5G transport networks. Very quick thoughts. I know it is. We are not going to do justice with the question, but very quick thoughts from anyone.
I think one of the most, there's a lot of important things to think about in this transport network that, connects these individual 5G nodes to each other and to the broader world, and in turn provides all these types of services and capabilities we're talking about. We're talking to provide the ultra reliable, low latency communication usage cases, which add value in certain applications. Well, a big part of that is moving compute power closer to the edge, closer to the subscriber. Not everyone's in a position where they can have a significant amount of compute power on site. So we're looking at putting these edge data centers there. So the 5G transport network, in the case of my company, we're talking about the fiber aspect of that, which again is 99% of the distance that the signals travel, is having, the expandability to handle that kind of increased traffic at certain locations, and the flexibility to adapt to putting an edge data center in a particular location, transforming a central office into a data center, building a new structure, and having those new connections made without having to go and redo all of this underground or aerial fiber infrastructure that stretches for many, many kilometers. So there's a number of technical things we've addressed. There's a number of things we're addressing with regards to logistical and labor management and other challenges to make sure that the networks that go in have that expandability and flexibility to accommodate these usage cases when, where, and how they develop.
Yeah, I think Joshua makes a lot of good points. It's, fundamentally, when you have any network, the hop that's the slowest hop is going to be the most vulnerable part. It's going to dictate your overall performance. And so you need to have some coordination in order to resolve that. Edge helps because it eliminates a number of hops and it pushes you outside of transit in some cases, so that really you're only, the issue in terms of performance is going to be the transmission speed, because you solve the propagation issue. So that's one of the things that 5G definitely brings in. I think in terms of, how are we going to be able to, kind of take advantage of the way we can build networks to take advantage of the new topologies that you can get is going to be super important. Load balancing to select optimal pipes or paths is going to be super important, particularly as you have something that's vastly more distributed between an edge and a regional site and a metro site. And so, whereas today most links that you find, kind of from metro to a cell site tends to be point to point, having more mesh-based connectivity so that you can easily select equal cost paths and have diversity in terms of where you deploy a particular application is going to be something that's going to need to be yielded by the underlying infrastructure that the 5G network sits on top of. And those types of considerations aren't things that are really being implemented today. They're things that we're going to have to put into capital budgets moving forward in order to be able to accommodate. So, the metro level diversity and mesh, or at least partial mesh capability is going to be interesting.
No, thank you so much. I know we have one more question, but we are top of the hour today. And I would like to thank all the speakers who have taken time to join us, and all the audiences who has come here and joined us today. Thank you so much for this participation, and we're looking forward to connecting with you. Nitin, to you.
Thank you, Ashish, and thank you all the speakers, Vish, Sunil, Joshua, Anthony, Ritesh. I think it was an absorbing discussion into how 5G is transforming the telecom industry, and I'd love to hear your views in this. I'd love to stay connected with you all guys as well in the near future. So just to wrap up, we would like to thank InfoVision, who is our knowledge and innovation partner, and Digit7, who is our technology partner. Digit7 have an innovation lab of 15,000 square feet in Richardson, Texas. Any one of you who are dropping by can always go to their office, have a look to feel that. To understand more in depth, connect with them, and to suggest any aspect, all of you can go through their website, which is infovision.com and digit7.io, and closely liaison with them. Also, we would like to thank our community partner and attendees who came together for enriching knowledge through this forum. We had a great set of panel speakers who came together to share thoughts. Just for your information, today's event was broadcasted in the YouTube and Facebook page of our company, so you all can go and see the recording anytime. Please log on to our website and like the social media channels. We'll be sharing lots of knowledge-sharing topics, announcement of next events, details, and much more, which will help you register and attend the same. There are a lot more in store for subsequent months with focus on banking, financial, insurance, healthcare, retail, telecom, supply chain, manufacturing, utility, energy, and so on. So request all of you to keep connected with us and enjoy the learning. Thanks, and do take good care of yourself. Have a lovely day and weekend ahead. Bye guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.